James goes out onto the thrust and he hits the first note on his guitar. And as he does, this bolt of lightning comes just outside the stadium. It just started raining even harder. I started when I was 17, and that was the beginning of stadium rock. The productions are nothing like what they were today.
You were part of creating the industry. What does it require to figure it out?
We just took it on. How are we going to make this fly? How are we going to rig this? How are we going to make this monster blow up? We'd be on the road for about 11 months of the year. A lot of people didn't even have homes to go back to. You went from one tour to the next to the next.
What a career. What a life.
The industry was very different back then, and we've turned it into this monster that it is today.
Did you love it?
It's hard enough as it is, so why make it any worse? But enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, then maybe it's not for you.
Welcome to the Gigs Podcast, live from Lititz. I'm your host, Nikki Sanz, and we are filming on campus in Rock Lititz at the conference. So we get to sit down with the very best in the touring and live event industry. So let's get into it. I'm here with Patrick Ledwith, currently the managing director of North America for ES Global. And previously, he's worked on the road with artists like U2, Van Halen, Iron Maiden, Marilyn Manson, Grateful Dead, David Bowie, Rolling Stones, Metallica, Guns N' Roses. My goodness, Patrick, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, of course. It's great to be here, you know.
So let's start at the beginning. You started as a stagehand.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a classic story, and you know, I've been in, well, it's 40 years now. You know, it's coming up for 40 years probably this year. And you know, I started when I was 17, and you know, I was, as we know, the industry was very different back then. You know, we've sort of over that time we've turned it into this monster that it is today.
Yeah.
And that we're all now feeding that monster, but of course amazing facilities like this. And
right.
But yeah, you know, I was on my way to the Marine Corps. You know, I'm from England, and I was headed to the Royal Marines, the commando unit. It's quite a hard selection process to get in, and I'm in the middle of that, and
wow.
And a friend says, can you come and help me unload a van, you know? And it was the Electric Ballroom. So the Electric Ballroom is where Jimi Hendrix played in London. It was a gig, it was a band called the Icicle Works, and that was it, you know. It was unload the van, you know, set up the gear. There you go, there's free food for you over there, we're going to pay you cash. What are you doing on Saturday, you know? And it was like, well, nothing. So, you know, unloading the next van. Long story short, I became a stagehand in London. Very, very quickly after that, got into rigging. You know, I had a good, you know, I like climbing around in dusty old roofs, and so I got in with a rigging company, and it snowballed from there, you know, and basically before I knew it, we were building stages for Joshua Tree and U2, and that's what brought us to the States, you know, and so that's how I came to the States, and I've been here ever since, you know, and setting up the staging company over here. Yeah, just went into that, just following that pathway, and at the time I was always the youngest crew chief and the youngest head carpenter and the youngest rigger, youngest stage manager. But yeah, so then getting into other bands and just sort of working through the industry, you know.
Okay, so talk about that. So what year was it that you came to America to start building these stages?
That was 87 was the Joshua Tree tour.
Joshua Tree.
And it was like Beatlemania. It was mad. I mean, that tour was, you know, unbelievable. It was the biggest tour in production at the time, and with U2.
With U2.
Yeah. So that was, you know, that was when U2 were turning into like, well, they were going from a big band to a mega band, you know, that's when, and that really was, I think, the beginning of the big touring productions. I mean, we'd worked in the past doing the staging, and back then it was Edwin Shirley's, when we were the only touring staging company in the world, and we were doing stuff like the Michael Jacksons and Queen, Genesis, stuff like that, and they Pink Floyd, you know, they were the big touring acts, and that was the beginning of, I think, stadium rock, right? So stadium touring, I think you could say that. But still, back then, the productions are nothing like what they were today. I mean, they were big,
right.
but now, you know, we just finished doing Beyonce. We had 120 trucks, you know, and loading it in 3 days, and that's what we do now, right? So
120 trucks.
Yeah.
So when you came over with U2, you're building stages. Talk about, what was your role?
I was on the crew, so we were a system. We were young. Once again, it was sort of like, you know, these big tours. There was 3 systems on it, and the first 2 were all these veteran, experienced crews, and then there was C system that was us, that they handpicked and everyone say, are these young kids going to be able to do it? And we were the one that basically kicked ass, you know. We're like, let's do it. We're going to America. And, you know, we just took it on. And like many things we've done in this business, it's like people say, well, we've got to do this, we've got to achieve this. And we'll go, oh, we'll do it. And then we'll turn around. Well, we've never done this before, but we'll figure it out. You know?
We already agreed to it.
Yeah. But we would, you know, you commit to it and you make it happen. And that's how this business, I think, you know, that's a common story for so many people, you know, everyone, all you know, across the board. And I think that work ethic, and it was a lot of work, it was hard, long days, and that willingness and that, we can do it, and then going, oh shit, let's figure out how to do it. But we deliver, right? If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. Yes. And that's an ethic that I think this business has been founded on.
Are there jobs in this industry that you would say are just very figure outable, so that you can just say, yeah, shit, I'll get into it. I'll just, like, what is the work ethic? What does it require to figure it out in this industry?
Not being told how to do it, that you come up and you know how to do it, even if you haven't done it before. And, you know, people joining this industry now, you know, we got the amazing buses and we got the trusses and everything works and, you know, everything's labeled. It was never like that, right? So we were sort of inventing the wheel, right?
Wow.
So, you know, there was a time, and, you know, not much longer before I started touring, that 3 trucks, you know, how are we going to do 3 trucks back-to-back shows with 3 trucks? We've got 3 trucks. But you figured it out, you know, and it's like, how are we going to make this fly? How are we going to rig this? How are we going to make this monster blow up? How are we going to, you know, we did it. We just figured it out. And a lot of it was maybe a bit Wayne's World, maybe a bit fixing it in the back of your garage, maybe doing it on the fly. But, yeah, I mean, look at Tate, you know, there's another good example, you know, look at people like Del Roll and Ollie Cut. I mean, the list goes on, and they've all, you know, Eric Pierce, bless him, you know, rest in peace. I mean, it was inventing it as you went along, you know.
Wow.
And it was like, and that's what turned into an industry today and what it is today.
You were a part of creating the industry, basically. Yeah. How do you feel about how it's transformed over the last 40 years?
Well, I mean, how do you feel? I think that's a tough question. I mean, it's very easy to be nostalgic, and there's a lot of people say, oh, it was better in the olden days, but was it? You know, I don't know. I mean, it's inevitable, right? It's change. You know, we created an industry. You know, I think people think it's gotten a bit too corporate. It's gotten a bit, but, you know, at the end of the day, it's about the very first minute that artist steps on the stage, you know, and that energy when you're in a stadium with 60,000 people, wherever it is in the world. Sometimes they might not even speak English, but they're singing every single song of the set in English, and they can't speak English. You know, like Iron Maiden, unbelievable. And it puts shivers up my spine thinking about that. And so that hasn't changed, you know, that hasn't changed. So that's, and if anything, you know, maybe it's got a bit bigger. So, you know, that would have been the same in Woodstock, you know, that would have been the same throughout, you know, all the big crazy shows that we've done. It's all about that emotion. So that hasn't changed. And we're just probably making it better, you know, we're probably making it, I think, better, safer. It's just the way it progressed. So I don't know. I think some people are critical with a big dose of nostalgia. Yeah. That's what it is. You can't invent. And so be a part of it, right? And make it the best you can. And I think that's what we're doing.
So you were part of some of the largest tours, especially at the time that was the pop music of the time too.
Yeah, and bands coming up. So, you know, being a part of that career, like, you know, your Metallicas from the early days and coming up, and then Van Halen, you know, 5 world tours with Van Halen, and was also with the Grateful Dead for 8 years. You know, so that you're seeing these bands that wrote the book, you know, or a big chapter in the books of what our industry is today. So,
what was the common thread in all of these, like, greatest bands? Like, what did you see as a common thread in all of them that kept them so great?
Why they were successful, you think? Why? Mm-hmm. Because they were on a driven path, but more than anything, it's what they did, right? And a lot of them, you know, I obviously did a lot of the rock bands that, and initially probably a little bit outcast, you know, that the radio didn't want to play, and, you know, MTV didn't want to play, and they're related to a niche culture, you know, a youth movement or whatever, that were a little bit independent, you know. So they did it, that rebellious stream. But at the end of the day, it's about the band and the fans. I mean, I remember, you know, the first time I worked with Maiden, and Steve Harris, the bass player, you know, the main guy behind the band, pretty much, came up and said, "Patrick, there's two things about this band: the fans and our audio. Audio was a big thing. He says, I don't care if somebody's at the barricade, at the front of the house, or in the cheapest seat all the way at the top of, the Estadio Nacional in Chile or wherever it might be. I want them to have the same experience. I want the sound to be the best. It's all about our fans, So that connection with the fans and just dedication and hard work, I don't think people realize how hard it is for some of these bands to achieve, that pathway. So it's that dedication.
Do you see a common thread in the crews working for these greatest of all time bands?
I think crews have gotten a lot bigger, but I think the common thread is that crews, it was a pretty small circles of people. I mean, we all knew each other, it's like a big family, so it all overlapped. So we all sort of helped each other, but yeah, there was a common thread. And I think, why did we do it? Why did we get into it? I think back in the day, we were probably a bunch of misfits, Well, we were like, maybe we were a little bit outcast. We probably weren't the best at school. A lot of us didn't go to college. I left home when I was 16, and it was...
Wow.
And we related to the people. And that was our family on the road, you lived it. And when we were touring, you got to remember, we'd be on the road for about 11 months of the year and maybe more. We had some tours that were over 2 years long, like the Metallica, the Black Album. There was people on that tour that had 3 birthdays on that tour. And a lot of people didn't even have homes to go back to, you went from one tour to the next. And so it was... that's how it was. But that was our home, the road, and it was.
Did you love it?
You do love it. I think you do love it. Maybe it can become a love-hate relationship, but in the end of the day, it gets under your skin. It's in there. It's what we do. And I think you do love it. And
when you moved to ES Global, what year was that?
So that was right around COVID. So okay. I was still with Iron Maiden. It was 11 years. That was 11 years that came after Dickie Bell, another, bless him, legend in our business, calls me up and I'm like, Dickie, I don't tour anymore, and he's telling me about these 6 weeks in the US, which is obviously home to me. And I said, all right, Dickie, I'll do your 6 weeks. I know you're in a bit of a spot. And it was because Jason Danta went off to do Lady Gaga. So it was, I said, I'll help you out. I'll do your 6 weeks and that's it. And they called me back the next year, and that turned into 11 years. And the reason that turned into 11 years was because it was a family, and Maiden are very much like, it's like you're touring in 1980 again. It was very much that family, compact core people working on that tour that have been literally on it since day one.
Wow.
And so then COVID hit. We managed to support the crew through it, 50% wages. We had a sold out stadium tour, it was, and then as we all know, COVID got a little bit longer and longer, and it was the reset period. And in that period, Ollie Watts and Jeff Burke approached me, they're the CEOs of ES Global. And of course, I've known them over the years. I've been a project manager for them. And Ollie Watts and myself, we used to swing hammers building the stages for the Stones back in the Edwin Shirley's days. And it was sort of a progression, and it was, we needed a director to run North America, and you're the only person we're talking to. And it was sort of like, well, I'm leaving the road now, and it took a bit of, took a lot of thought, it was, but it was an obvious career path. Like a lot of us, it's like now you become basically a company executive, and now I'm spend far too much time in front of a computer screen at a desk.
It's a transition.
It is. But once again, you do that because it's part of the growth, right? So the reason for doing it is ES Global, like many of these companies now, we got big investors on board. We got a career path. We've got, we're not just doing the music business, which we're known for, and it's the core of, it's the ethos of who we are as a company, and it always will be. But, we're projects like the Olympics. So LA 28 is our big anchor event here. And that's what
in what capacity?
Once again, it's just like our staging, just like the Beyonce staging and all the staging we do all over the world. And we build structures, so we're, it's big temporary modular structures, and you wouldn't have thought it when you started, but now we're doing jobs for the Department of State, so we're doing like the US Pavilion in Osaka, which we just completed, and jobs like that, and whole theaters, and
wow.
So that's, and that's all part of the career path, and it's all part of how fulfilling a need for what the industry's asking for, which came along with the growth of it, and how we built it.
How is this building stages, building structures that you guys do at ES Global, how is it different for entertainment specifically versus construction?
First of all, speed in delivery. I mean, a construction, if you look at regular construction, and now what we do, it does overlap, because we're talking about, building theaters, and our whole approach was from the road. We're loading in, we're loading out, we're putting it in, and then we're moving to the next place. And that sort of evolved into the modular construction, which is really a modern method of construction, and the buildings just got bigger and bigger. I mean, the way it started for us was we were the global touring staging company, and we did stages and trucking. Originally, it came from the trucking.
Got it.
And then MTV called us right around the time after the Berlin Wall come down, and said, we want to do the MTV Music Awards at the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, but there is no venue there. And we're like, well, we can do it. And it was another one of those moments. It's like, right, and now we got to do it, and we'll come up with it. So that was building the whole studio, the whole venue, the whole lot. And that's where the company sort of moved into structures, and then, Olympics for the last 25 years, and so just once again, it's just redefining, creating that space and the methods and the technology based on a route of touring, steel structures, and then evolving those into what they are today, which have become a lot more complicated venues, like the ABBA Theatre in London, for example. So we were part of the design, build, and custom structure with like 700 tons of steel in the roof that we lifted in one lift, and so it's the progression, and it's gotten bigger, and it's gotten heavier, and it's gotten more complex, but it's been a part of facilitating that, designing it, and just moving it forward, and it's exciting.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're having the knowledge of roadies coming in to build these things, it's going to be built in the way that roadies coming through doing shows will be happy about, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So I think, to your question, the difference between regular construction and what we do, on a regular building site, if you're building a bridge, you're building a tower block, you're building a hotel or whatever, you go late, you're late on delivering, you can pay a penalty, right? For us, when the show goes on, right?
Oh, yeah.
When you go live to the world with the Olympics, when you need to put your artists on the stage, that date doesn't change, and that's what we've all worked to, and we've all, that's the ethos, and that's who we are. It's like, this is the date, and then you work back from there and making it happen.
So there must be just some crazy different efficiencies, I can imagine, too, in problem solving.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you get into it's problem solving. That's your job as a production manager. When you're a production manager on the road, I've been asked how many times, what's your job? It's, well, first of all, assuming the responsibility, and then problem solving, and then making everyone else's life easier, right? So that's just organization, management. When you get into like the Olympics and the bigger projects that we do, it's all about the strength of our project management teams, and it's our teams and it's the advanced work, just like anything, and how you phase that out, and how you schedule it, and how you program it, and working back from that crucial date, of this is when we go live, this is showtime, and how you come back from that.
So working on a show like Beyonce, just this last tour, what was that, Cowboy Carter?
Yeah.
One of the largest tours in the world, if not the largest. What does it mean? You're director of North America touring and operations here, ES Global. How do you even start a project like that? What's the initial phase, and then how do you get to full execution? Yeah,
sure. I mean, it's, the design phase, right? So you're creating, at the end of the day, you're creating a spectacle for people, but we had almost 150 tons hanging off of that stage, and something like Beyonce, it's not your regular stage that you just pull out of the way. It's a custom built, and so the engineering involved and the planning. So it's a combination of getting the creative side, because there's always a creative image, and as we know, creative minds are very different from technical minds. And it's blending those two worlds and managing that process, going through the design to create a pretty picture into a reality 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the road when you do your first show. And once again, I think all of us involved in this business, the reason we can do it, especially as these shows get bigger, is it's a combination of the experience that we've created over the last 40, 45 years. So, and it all comes, and each show now, we all bring it to the table, and from all our different sides, from the creative side, so it's
I mean, it keeps getting bigger and bigger. I'm sure that you never, when how you started, never expected it to be 120 trucks production for a show. Like, how does it get bigger? Do you see it getting even bigger?
It just does, and I just think bigger and better, I suppose. Maybe that's not necessarily always the case, but it just does. It's the nature of it, and I think also, technically, they're a lot more complex as well. I mean, what we could do is, but you didn't think about it back then, because what you were doing back then was massive as well. It was all just massive. It's all. And I don't think size is necessarily the gauge of it. I think size is just a default to what you were doing at the time. And part of the process also is managing that size to an extent. It's controlled, but you got to think about how the big thing breaks down into the little boxes that go into the big boxes on wheels called trucks, and how we can actually make it work. So like you said, the logistics and project management and advanced pre-production is huge, because if not, it would never happen.
This episode is brought to you by Gigs, the professional career platform for the live event industry. So if you're looking for jobs in the live event space, or if you are hiring in this industry, go to gigs.live, become a professional, become an employer, start posting jobs and applying to jobs now. Join our community of tens of thousands of professionals in this industry. We have events around the country. We have employment opportunities. We have entertainment. We have education. So join Gigs today, gigs.live. Also, please go give us a 5-star review and follow us on our socials at gigs.live. How many years were you a production manager?
Almost 20 or something.
20, yeah.
I mean, I did production manager, a bit of tour management, but as the sort of stage manager. I mean, it's all relevant. Head carpenter. Rigging, of course, is what it is. A rigger still translates today when we're sitting at a table looking at a design. It's just understanding of the different phases. And I think as a production manager, it's really important. I think there's very few people that, I can't think of anyone that's just come into this business as a production manager. I mean, we've all gone up that staircase, that staircase to heaven, that the ladder. We've all climbed the ladder or whatever, and it's important because as a production manager or as any leader, like I say, you're there to make everyone else's job easier. So you need to know that job. You need to understand that job, and I think you also still need to be prepared. You can't just hide yourself in a production office. You got to be prepared when the goings gets tough or there's an issue. You need to be prepared to do everyone else's job. I mean, granted, the technology now, don't get me, if you put me behind a sound desk or a lighting desk, I don't know what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
But you'll surround yourself by people that are now, it's another world, and that's why it's so precise. Back to we can pinpoint so that the sound at the top of that stadium is exactly what we want. The technology, the lights, the video, it's just amazing. But you surround yourself by the people, good people, and then you facilitate their success, and I think it's that.
When you look back at your career, I mean, you've worked with some of the largest artists in the world. Do you remember certain key moments in your career that you're like, damn, I can't believe I get to do this?
100%.
Let's hear it.
Of course. I mean, it's there's just too many, but there's going to be so many different moments. I mean, I was lucky enough at the Albert Hall in London. I did a show with Ella Fitzgerald and the Count Basie Orchestra, and I remember looking at that show and I was in tears. I was so moved by it, and watching Prince do a sound check, watching a stadium in Lisbon where the mosh pit is like the whole floor. I mean, just the moments go on and on. I mean, it's endless stuff, and it's the camaraderie, the friends. To me, there was always a moment on the road where you finished the load out and it's quiet, everything's quiet. Everyone's gone to bed on the bus, and I would sit next to the bus driver and just seeing an empty road. It sounds silly, but it was kind of like my piece, I was like chatting to the bus driver, or seeing a sunset come up as you're driving through the desert, or you're driving through a national park, or you're going through a tunnel into Switzerland. I mean, it was just, it was just those little moments, and the crazy stuff, like the smell of a stadium, of an empty stadium after a show, It wasn't a great smell, but it was one that it was kind of comforting to you, because that's, it was a space,
Wow.
Weather, some of the crazy weather events that we've had, rain. I mean, one show in Metallica, it was Madrid, Atletico Madrid, and in the stadium, and it was absolutely pouring. Some people might even cancel shows under those conditions. It was ridiculous, and it probably wasn't very safe either. And walked out, and I remember James goes out onto the thrust, says something to the crowd, and he hits the first note on his guitar, and as he does, a bolt of lightning comes down. This is the band, obviously, that Ride the Lightning was one of their albums. Yeah. This bolt of lightning comes just outside the stadium. I mean, I think nowadays you probably would have cancelled it. And it just started raining even harder. And it was like that the whole show. It was one of the best. I mean, it was amazing, So,
wow.
So yeah, there's just endless moments,
And all of those are a core memory to every fan. And so for you to have all of these crazy core memories all in your head, I mean, that's what a career, what a life.
Yeah, well, I think the memory of the fan, what's crazy is you come up and now you got fans going, this was my first show ever, and now I've got my son or my daughter here,
Oh,
and even
wow.
some of them, it's 3 generations of fans, and it's quite warming, because at the end of the day, it's all about the fans, Without the fans, none of this would be here. So
I'm about to ask you a very difficult question, and I don't know if you can answer it.
I'll do my
best.
But
do you have a favorite band show that you would that's your show, that's the best artist you've seen, the best show?
The Clash.
Wow, I'm shocked. Okay, why The Clash?
Because that was just part of who I was,
Wow.
and yeah, it was an ethic, political reasons, all sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
And then followed with probably Bob Marley. So The Clash of Bob. So and that's it. That's the Desert Island Disc right there.
Oh my gosh! Did you work with Bob, or did you go attend?
No, I never got to work with Bob, and I had the opportunity to go to one of his shows, and I didn't. I was like, I'll catch him on the next tour.
Yeah.
Last tour, biggest regret of my life. Anyway.
How crazy is that? Man, I still have a million questions, but I think for anyone who's in the industry, maybe they've been doing it for 20 years, maybe they're feeling a little jaded by it. I'm sure you have probably felt feelings of, this sucks. And then what do you look to kind of come back into it and make you love it again? Or what advice would you give to people who've been in it for a while to keep going?
You know what? I mean, I think and this isn't our industry, it's anything. It's, if you don't love what you're doing, do something else. I mean, do it, go out there, seize the day, carpe diem. It's up to you at the end of the day, and that's the personality that this industry needs. We need people, we can help guide people, we can help share the culture, we need, the next generation, we need you guys to take the reins. We'll learn from you guys, I'm sure, we'll learn, but if you don't enjoy it, if you don't like it, maybe it's not for you, I don't know. So that's it, just enjoy it, and we all have up days and down days, and one of the expressions that I lived by, growing up as a kid, told by somebody, a mentor of mine that I was working with, is always keep your rag firmly in your back pocket. Tarquin Morgan, rest in peace. So that means don't take your baggage to work with you. It's like when you're on tour, how you affect other people. And that's really important as a production manager as well. You need to set that mood. You can't have a bad day as a production manager. I mean, there's plenty of them, but you keep it inside, right? Ooh. Because, you're there to maintain the morale of that crew. So, that was a big one. We're not out here saving lives. We don't need to be shouting at each other. We don't need, we just need to be cool, calm, and enjoy it. It's hard enough as it is, so why make it any worse? But enjoy it. I think, but to your point, if you don't enjoy it, then maybe it's not for you.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I'm trying to. I've got 2 young daughters. I started late because
You were gone.
I was gone, and to me, and that was another part of leaving the road. You know why? You know, of taking this job is because I wanted to be there for those girls, you know? And it's as simple as that. And I think the legacy is they're my legacy at the end of the day. And so I take them to shows, and but yeah, I just
Future tour managers?
Future, I don't know, but we'll see. But the legacy, I guess, is they look back and go, yeah, Daddy was a good daddy, and he was a part of this crazy business, and that's it. And friends, and just the legacy is. But legacy, I tell you what, and it touched me, and it almost brought me to tears. And I was talking to a friend who we were talking about calmness, on tour and how you manage, and very prominent production manager these days, working with a big band. And we were chatting in the bar last night, and I said, I just talked to one of your crew, and who's very complimentary about you as a production manager and how calm, it is. And he turns around and he goes, Patrick, do you know where I learned that from? I learned that from you.
Wow.
And that was, that's probably the best legacy, and it touched me. So that's, so if I've had an impact and a good impact on people, and if I've helped this business a little bit, then that's my legacy.
It takes a very strong person to remain calm through the craziness of being a production manager. So that, I'm sure you earned that strength through the career. So thank you for sharing all of this. It's
a pleasure.
Pleasure to know you, and thank you for
likewise.
doing this.
Yeah.